Hello and welcome. Challenge accepted? 30 questions coming up. Who was the first emperor of Rome? Augustus. Julius Caesar. Nero. The correct answer is Augustus. Here's an interesting fact. Augustus became the first emperor of Rome after Julius Caesar. Which ancient civilization built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? Babylonians. Egyptians. Greeks. The correct answer is Babylonians. Here's an interesting fact. The Hanging Gardens were built in ancient Babylon. Who was the famous Queen of France during the French Revolution? Marie Antoinette. Catherine the Great. Cleopatra. The correct answer is Marie Antoinette. Here's an interesting fact. Marie Antoinette was the last queen of France before the Revolution. What is the name of the famous ship that carried the pilgrims to America? Mayflower. Santa Maria. Endeavor. The correct answer is Mayflower. Here's an interesting fact. The Mayflower carried the pilgrims to America in 1620. Who was the King of England during the Battle of Agincourt? Henry V. Richard III. Edward I. The correct answer is Henry V. Here's an interesting fact. Henry V led England to victory at the Battle of Agincourt. Which ancient civilization built the city of Troy? Greeks. Romans. Egyptians. The correct answer is Greeks. Here's an interesting fact. The city of Troy was built by the ancient Greeks. Who was the famous king of Macedonia who created a huge empire? Alexander the Great. Philip II. Darius. The correct answer is Alexander the Great. Here's an interesting fact. Alexander the Great conquered much of the known world. What is the name of the famous library in ancient Egypt? Library of Alexandria. Library of Babylon. Library of Athens. The correct answer is Library of Alexandria. Here's an interesting fact. The Library of Alexandria was a center of learning in ancient Egypt. Who was the first female ruler of China? Wu Zetian. Cixi. Cleopatra. The correct answer is Wu Zetian. Here's an interesting fact. Wu Zetian was the only female emperor in Chinese history. Which civilization built the city of Carthage? Phoenicians. Romans. Greeks. The correct answer is Phoenicians. Here's an interesting fact. Carthage was founded by the Phoenicians in North Africa. Who was the famous king of the Franks who became emperor of the Romans? Charlemagne, Louis XIV, William the Conqueror. The correct answer is Charlemagne. Here's an interesting fact. Charlemagne united much of Europe and became emperor. What is the name of the famous battle where William Wallace fought? Battle of Stirling Bridge, Battle of Hastings, Battle of Waterloo. The correct answer is Battle of Stirling Bridge. Here's an interesting fact. William Wallace led the Scots at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Who was the queen who ruled ancient Egypt with her brother? Cleopatra, Nefertiti, Hatshepsut. The correct answer is Cleopatra. Here's an interesting fact. Cleopatra ruled Egypt alongside her brother. Which ancient civilization built the Parthenon? Greeks, Romans, Egyptians. The correct answer is Greeks. Here's an interesting fact. The Parthenon was built by the ancient Greeks in Athens. Who was the King of England during the War of the Roses? Henry VI, Edward III, Richard I. The correct answer is Henry VI. Here's an interesting fact. Henry VI was king during the War of the Roses. What is the name of the famous Viking explorer who reached North America? Leif Erikson, Eric the Red, Harold Bluetooth. The correct answer is Leif Erikson. Here's an interesting fact. Leif Erikson was a Viking who sailed to North America. Who was the famous Queen of Spain who supported Columbus? Isabella I, Elizabeth I, Victoria. The correct answer is Isabella I. Here's an interesting fact. Queen Isabella I of Spain supported Christopher Columbus. Which civilization built the city of Petra? Nabateans, Romans, Greeks. The correct answer is Nabateans. Here's an interesting fact. Petra was built by the Nabateans in the desert. Who was the King of England who broke away from the Catholic Church? Henry VIII, John, Edward VI. The correct answer is Henry VIII. Here's an interesting fact. Henry VIII started the Church of England. What is the name of the famous ancient city in Mesopotamia? Babylon, Athens, Rome. The correct answer is Babylon. Here's an interesting fact. Babylon was a major city in ancient Mesopotamia. Who was the famous Queen of Scotland executed by Elizabeth I? Mary, Queen of Scots. Victoria. Elizabeth II. The correct answer is Mary, Queen of Scots. Here's an interesting fact. Mary, Queen of Scots was executed by order of Elizabeth I. Which civilization built the city of Chichen Itza? Mayans. Romans. Egyptians. The correct answer is Mayans. Here's an interesting fact. Chichen Itza was built by the Mayans in Mexico. Who was the king of France known as the Sun King? Louis XIV. Henry IV. Charles V. The correct answer is Louis XIV. Here's an interesting fact. Louis XIV was called the Sun King and ruled France for many years. What is the name of the famous ancient city in Greece known for its warriors? Sparta. Athens. Corinth. The correct answer is Sparta. Here's an interesting fact. Sparta was famous for its strong warriors. Who was the famous Queen of England who never married? Elizabeth I. Victoria. Mary I. The correct answer is Elizabeth I. Here's an interesting fact. Elizabeth I was known as the Virgin Queen because she never married. Which civilization built the city of Rome? Romans. Greeks. Egyptians. The correct answer is Romans. Here's an interesting fact. Rome was founded by the ancient Romans. Who was the King of England during the Spanish Armada? Elizabeth I. Henry VIII. James I. The correct answer is Elizabeth I. Here's an interesting fact. Queen Elizabeth I was the monarch during the Spanish Armada. What is the name of the famous ancient city in Turkey? Troy. Athens. Babylon. The correct answer is Troy. Here's an interesting fact. Troy is an ancient city in modern-day Turkey. Who was the famous queen of ancient Egypt known for her beauty? Nefertiti. Cleopatra. Hatshepsut. The correct answer is Nefertiti. Here's an interesting fact. Nefertiti was an Egyptian queen known for her beauty. Which civilization built the city of Athens? Greeks. Romans. Egyptians. The correct answer is Greeks. Here's an interesting fact: Athens was built by the ancient Greeks. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Stay tuned for more exciting content, and we'll catch you in the next one.